I'm not a person who regularly has ideas for inventions or someone who spends a lot of time thinking about it, but I have had a couple over my life. The one that I think had the most potential was an idea I had when I was probably 21, and it was for an attachment or a type of toilet. I learned how the toilet refills with water at every flush, clean water right out of the whole house system and goes into that tank. And I thought someone should invent a toilet that instead of just filling that tank, behind the scenes, so to speak, it should fill it into a little tiny sink bowl or a little tiny sink on top of the tank. So the second after you flushed, you could kind of, gently wash your hands. That water you washed your hands with would then hit that little sink and go into the tank. You would use less water. It would be more economical and efficient, and just overall a better toilet design for conserving water. I've actually seen that toilet about 5 years ago. I saw it online, and it was, I think someone tagged it as something that existed in Japan. So not sure if that had been done for decades there, but I bring this up because we're talking about inventions today, and our guest is Stephen Steele. And Stephen has invented a new concrete mixer. And you're probably thinking, how could that be possible? How many ways are there? I'm going to take a minute and describe this mixer because we don't do that in the interview. But the Steele mixer works by rocking a bucket back and forth, more or less. And the weight of the bucket is resting on an axle. You're simply just kind of tipping it back and forth, and as it pivots, the water and the cement slosh around and mix themselves up. And there's a lot more engineering to it. I'm saying bucket, but a bucket is not the right word. It's a very carefully shaped container that the mud hits and sloshes itself around in. And then it has a method to kind of lock itself, and it's designed so you can scoop it right out of the mixer with a shovel. It's really neat. It's kind of one of these uniquely simple designs. And when I first saw it, my thought was, how has nobody else thought of this, or how come I've never seen this all the time? It seems more obvious than mixing mud in a wheelbarrow, which is the way that most of us do it. So we're talking with Stephen, and it's primarily we're talking about the process he went through getting this patent. He's a contractor, a general contractor in California, and just really a neat guy. And man, it's just such a fun story hearing him explain the process of getting the patent and developing this tool. And he's like, I don't even know if he's halfway in the story, because this is all kind of recent, and he's just now sort of pivoting to this new phase of getting his product out there and selling it, and distribution, the part that matters. And so I'm happy to help. I hope that we get some a couple viewers who watch or listen to this who think it's something they could use. We're going to have one on our main channel one of these days, and I'm excited for my dad to see it, because maybe he's seen something like it before. I doubt it, but we will see. I hope you enjoy the interview. Stephen is a really great guy, and we're talking about patents. We're talking about ideas and developing them. It's really more about, I wouldn't say goal setting, but certainly persistence. This guy was told no repeatedly, you'll hear in the story, and it's really a testament to that grit of sticking to something and sticking to your guns. And it was really a pleasure to talk to him. I hope you enjoy it. Without any further ado, Stephen Steele. First of all, thank you for taking the time. And I got to think, you and I were just talking, but you've probably just been on this journey for, I don't know how long, but separate from the tool itself, can you talk about this journey you're on, the stage you're at right now, and what the last however many years have been like, sort of, since this idea got started in your head?
13 years. Wow. It all started when I went to my little sister's wedding in Virginia, and I was there for about a week, and my grandfather built a house next door to my dad's house there. And, before the wedding on a Saturday, I look across the field over there and I see my grandfather in his backyard working with this machine. And I didn't know what he was doing. And I'm a contractor and I know all the tools. And I was stopped in my place and I'm like, what is my grandfather doing? So I immediately walk over to him and I realize he's mixing concrete in this contraption. And I said, Grandpa, what are you doing? And he goes, don't you know about this? This is your great grandfather's invention. It mixes concrete. And I was fascinated. And I'm blown away and spent the afternoon watching him mix more and got in there. And that machine worked. It worked way better than a wheelbarrow and nicer than an electric mixer. I don't know if you use those. Those are horrible. But basically, it was a heart-shaped mixer. And it flopped it back and forth. And, after I flew away from the wedding and, I was thinking about this machine. It's all I was thinking about. And, it was supposedly our family secret. It was quiet. No one, keep it in the backyard, hide it. Don't show anyone. And, and I was thinking, man, why aren't we, monopolizing this? This is incredible, right? Way better than a wheelbarrow. And then I flew out and saw my grandfather again, like 3 years later, and asked him if I could have that.
Oh,
well, wow. Yeah, but the problem is then I came and brought it back and found out through, a couple $1,000s that some guy all the way across the country named Hewitt invented this heart-shaped mixer in 1941. And then the Depression came and that whole thing got lost, right? Nobody ever saw this thing again. I liked it. It worked better than a wheelbarrow, but it didn't quite work because it was a heart shape, right? So it just flop it back and forth. Really didn't really bust it up a lot. And you still had to get in there, but still hands down, it was easier than a wheelbarrow. And then about 2 years later, I woke up like this light bulb went off in my head. And I said, wait a minute. If you put another trough in the middle, it'll create this mixing chamber now instead of this flopping chamber.
Yeah.
And that's when I went head forward with this. I put my head down. It was before Christmas. My family didn't see me. I was out in the garage trying to build one of these, which took, almost a half a year to build one. Because I don't know if you've seen my prototype, but metal bending like this is almost impossible.
Yeah.
And then another light bulb came off and I realized how to bend the metal properly. And then I finally got to build one. And man, that day that I mixed a bag of concrete in one of these new mixers, the steel mixer.
Yeah.
I had goosebumps. I was chilled. I'm like, this is worth patenting.
Yeah.
This is an invention. And I credit my great grandfather's invention, but there was a lot of hard work to get to that part, to get to the steel mixer.
Yeah, that is so cool. So I'm guessing to some extent, I'm sure it was modified here and there, but for the most part, that additional chamber just instantly created the turbulence, and it was pretty much like close to perfect to some extent.
Disruptive eddies is what I call it.
Yeah.
It really does. It's that extra chamber really makes this turbulence in the middle of just not flopping. It's making like a mixing chamber in the middle, and you can see it when you mix it. It really is. You can mix a full bag of concrete, throw some gravel on the top, right, and then move it back and forth, and the gravel won't be there in about 2 turns. It's a thorough mix.
I got to think, just like your grandfather or great grandfather was thinking this family secret, at that moment, you were probably feeling a little bit like protective of it as well. What was that like?
It's non-disclosures.
Yeah.
To anybody that wanted to see it or talk about it. Getting my wife on board with filing for a patent was, she's a realist, and, I credit her, to helping me get it. She was the backbone of this whole company, really, keeping everything in line. And but when you have a patent attorney look at the Hewitt mixer, the old one, and its design, and then you have my design, and you hear him say, I don't know if you're going to be able to patent this. You know, you just added this little trough in the middle.
Yeah.
And my gut was telling him, no, I didn't just add this. You know, there was a lot of ingenuity involved in this, you know, and isn't that what inventions are, is, you know, prior art. And, you know, so talking your lawyer into getting a patent is well,
and paying them, you got to like talk them into it, but also got to like, you're the one writing the check over and over, I would assume. And
that's what I told him. I said, I'm willing to invest money to get this, you know, a chance, you know, to get a
How
patent.
is it that a patent in 1941 or whatever you said, that is still a protected, don't patents expire at some point? Or how is it that almost 80 years later that invention is still not public?
Well, it is public, but if you want to protect something of your own, you know, you can't mimic it. Yeah. So.
I see. To differentiate yours from whether it was public or still under patent, in order for yours to be under. I understand.
Right. You know, I learned a lot with the patenting process, and honestly, when it comes down to getting a patent, it's all about the wording and having you know, it's in the wording. What does the word say that picture does, right? Because one of the things that Hewitt's patent said was prevents disruptive eddies. His shape does. It prevents it. And mine says encourages disruptive eddies, right? And that is the key difference between his and mine.
Wow.
That's how I mean, completely honest, is getting my patent is right there. There it is. Not only is it the design, and I had to write back up a little bit. They said no to my patent 5 times.
Oh.
And every time they say no, you have a choice. You got to write a check, first of all, a big check. And then you got to pay people to argue it.
Yeah.
So I had, you know, an engineer helping me and a patent lawyer, and I'm a general contractor. I don't have a lot of extra dough, right?
Right.
And my wife's a realist and my biggest supporter, but you know, that was rough for her too, you know, to be writing checks that could be just thrown away, right?
Yeah. Yeah, especially writing the 5th check. You know, it's like, these people don't care about you or your idea. It's nothing to them. It's your whole world at that point. It's just, it is. That's a tough, God, like rolling the dice one more time like that, man, that's impressive.
Well, honestly, that last time was the last time. They said, this is your final time, you know, to explain why you think you should get a patent. And before that last time, I used the lawyers, I used my engineers. They were arguing all this stuff, right? And what I really learned, though, is I guarantee you my next patent that I file will be a lot easier, because I learned a lot about what they're looking for. And I ended up writing an affidavit about how I started the process, prior art, and what process it was to actually get a working steel mixer. It wasn't just drawing a little circle in between and snapping my fingers and saying, hey, I got a great idea. No way, man. There was a lot of work involved and a lot of thinking and a lot of, you know, I get some of my best ideas right when I wake up in the morning, like that. I'm so fresh right then, you know, and I'm like, oh, wait, I know, right? There was a couple, I call them light bulb moments. There was a couple to get the steel mixer, and I wrote it all down, and my wife, she went in and made it sound, you know, solid. She's a paralegal and also everything else, but made it all solid. And then literally they gave me the patent within a month.
Wow.
And
so I've done things that the people I hired, it was so much like make or break, like who you pick for this project and for good or bad. So what do you say to, and if you were doing another patent or going for, are you going to just kind of take the lessons you learned and be in charge of it? Or do you have attorneys and people in mind? Like, I'm going to try these guys next time, or what have you learned in that regard? Thinking about somebody who might have an idea, who's, you know, just scared to jump in for this exact reason. They don't know these things yet. And they maybe don't have the confidence with whatever person they're working with.
I definitely feel like you better have a good lawyer, though, that knows the words and the wording of, I forget what they call it, but, I don't know if you've ever heard of a patent, but the way it's written is kind of, it's English, it's a language I never heard of before. It's really, law-y, if you will. Having a patent attorney, but also my advice would be to, you're going to hear a lot of no's, and keep your confidence if you believe that you have something that's worth making. If your gut says, hey, I want one of these, and everyone else should have one of these, then, the no's didn't slow me down, man. I knew deep down inside that this was worth pursuing. And, the world needs a steel mixer. It really does. And I know it's coming from me, but, the simplicity of mixing concrete with it is just incredible. And I'm still shocked every time I mix one that, man, I got a patent for this, But
yeah. There's something beautiful about simple machines. I mean, I love complex machines also, but sometimes when you see it, and when I first saw your mixer in a video, I remember I was just shaking my head. Like, how is it that this doesn't exist already? Like, and I think I read the title first, like a brand new way to mix concrete. And it's funny because it sounds kind of like inventing a wheel. It's kind of like, no, there's only one wheel. It really sounded like that. And when I saw it, I was just shaking my head like, son of a gun. It really is. And it's so simple.
They were on the right path in 1940s. They really were. They were. What it is if you think about every way that we mix concrete right now, it's fighting gravity, right? In a wheelbarrow, you're pulling it and the gravity is making the shovel heavy or hoe or whatever you use. In an electric mixer, it's pushing the concrete up, and the big cement trucks that are mixing, all these ways, or even this bag, like the 2-man bag thing, you're lifting it up, and the steel mixer, the second the gravity is heavy, it flips over, right? So there's gravity is actually mixing concrete for you. It really is.
It's the inertia also, like the weight becomes like your friend, because the inertia is like doing the swinging for you.
Right. And they were on that path in the 1940s. They were, but the Depression came in,
Yeah. We had a company send us a mixer from Europe, but it's a really beautiful mixer. And I know they do a lot of masonry and concrete over there. So they just mix a lot more types of cements and mortars and stuff than we do. So it makes sense that they have more mixing tools, but it came with like this big bucket barrel thing. And I remember, and one of the first things that I, noticed was like, man, if you fill this thing up with concrete, it's heavy. So how does the steel mixer work in general in terms of, that's the benefit of a wheelbarrow. You got it on a wheel ready to move. And almost every time I am mixing concrete in a wheelbarrow, I'm then like moving it somewhere. But how do you approach a job with a steel mixer since there's not a wheel under it?
So I have 4 attachments coming out, and right as we speak right now, they're being built in fabricated and going through testing. One of them is a backpack attachment, so you can actually pick it up and walk up a hill and dump it where you need. Oh, wow. And the other thing is you can also carry the whole machine inside of it, right? You're going somewhere.
Yeah, and your water and your lunch and everything.
Right, whatever. Yeah, right. The other one I have is a wheelbarrow attachment. If it's, so you can set the steel mixer on top of that. I have a hitch attachment for the farmers and the ranchers, so they can put all their stuff in the back of their truck and have the steel mixer right there.
Yeah.
And then let's see, 1, 2, 3. That's all the attachments I'm working on right now.
Okay, that is too cool. And it's almost like anytime you get a new tool, you may not know exactly how you're going to implement it. In other words, I've got some projects here, and I was imagining, okay, if steel mixer, well, I would probably just mix the mud right next to where I was going, and then move the mixer to the next location or something like that. You might just kind of change your workflow to some extent, like you do with anytime you have a new tool or something, right?
We did a job where we did 5 yards and mixed it with the steel mixers.
That's we had a lot.
4 of them. It was.
Wow.
And we built a little platform so you could get the wheelbarrow underneath it. And that's when I was like, wait, we need a wheelbarrow attachment, right?
Yeah.
And I was going to make one that fits on top of a wheelbarrow, but then it's too high up. So I was like, dude, I'll just make my own wheelbarrow, right? So That's what we're doing right now. Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. So are you the kind of guy who always had ideas, when you're a kid and younger, like invention ideas? Is this something that you've a muscle that you've sort of developed over your life? Or is this sort of the first time you've kind of got in this sort of inventing mindset?
That's a great question. I had a pretty rough time in school when I was younger, and I have dyslexia. And, when I was a lot younger, I felt like, I wasn't a smart kid in school. So I really didn't allow myself to go into deep thoughts or stuff because I was kind of brainwashed, right? And being in the military, you move around every 3 years. So you're dealing with a whole new teacher system and like, oh, here's the kid with dyslexia. And they didn't really understand it when I was growing up. Huh. I'm thankful for it because it makes me think outside the box, really. So to answer your question, there was kind of a light bulb moment for me where I realized, man, I love when there's a problem, I love trying to figure out how to solve it, right? And the big one was with the steel mixer. It started, the steel mixer came into my life and I started thinking about it, and then actually building one and having it work just made me open my mind. And honestly, I have about 7 or 8 solid inventions that I'm going to hit right after this one. Wow. Some are construction and some are in different areas that I can't really talk about right now. But sure. I'm excited about those. Although I do feel that the mixer is definitely probably going to be the most productive one because it fits with a lot of different people in third world countries and, globally. Right. And then some of these other ones are for more, people that have money. So
separate from the challenge, let's say, of obtaining a patent and developing your prototypes, which is intense and in some ways seems like enough to steer people away. But even after you get a patent, the whole process of distribution and manufacturing and like moving a product, there's so much expertise in that I know I don't have. And so I'm curious, you obviously have like unstoppable energy and I'm sure you're just going to apply it towards that and solve it. But how are you looking at that now? Because I assume to some extent that's the next nut you got to crack. Is that right?
That's a really good question. And it's all new to me. I learned a lot in the last 8 months about distributing, and like all my sales are going to go off my website right now. Yeah. And I'm not selling third party. I'm selling direct. And I learned a lot about shipping and how expensive it is. Eventually, I probably will have a factory, centrally so that it can go like, Midwest kind of area so that shipping's less. But it's all been trial and error and not afraid to ask questions. I'm thankful that I have a very good drop shipping company down in LA that also makes my mold. They do all the shipping from right there. Cool. And, I learned a lot about molds, right? Because I have 2 different molds for this. I have an injection mold for the axle, and then I have a tumble mold for the drum. And as far as, it was all trial and error, really just asking questions, calling companies. Hey, how does this work? Can you check out this part? I want this to be made in the USA. And then I've had a lot of no's too. A lot of companies that just aren't really nice people, right? They just care about the buck. So I learned a lot about what companies to trust and what ones not to, really.
Yeah, I'm sure there was a time where if you couldn't get your product, like in construction, let's say in like, I don't know, Northern Tool or some big catalog, it's kind of like, or Home Depot, then good luck. But I guess this day and age, you can sell it right on your own website directly to people, so that barrier is not quite maybe what it used to be. Hey, can you explain these injections again? Because that's another thing that I'm sure you've had to learn yourself, but I understand injection molding. That's plastics getting, like, I guess, as a liquid form injected into a mold and then hardening. But could you kind of explain both of those 2 molding processes that you mentioned?
Yeah. So one thing that I'm really proud about is that all of my plastics are made out of recycled plastic. It was a really important move for the steel mixer because, I feel like, well, one, making stuff overseas is just greedy and wasteful. And then two, we have a plastic problem in this world, right? Like if you're using fresh organic plastic, you're being greedy. And completely, to be completely honest, recycled plastic doesn't cost. It's the same price almost, really.
Huh.
Yeah,
Wow.
it comes in black.
Huh.
You can't get the nice green colors or whatever, right?
Wow.
So, and I don't mind the black. So here's an injection mold. This is the axle that goes on each side of the drum. And before this, I had to use a floor flange and a pipe, and making them was so stressful, man. First of all, I can guarantee you they're not made in the United States. And if you do buy one that's made in the United States, you're paying a lot of money for one.
Yeah.
This, after I bought the mold, is pretty cheap to make.
Wow.
And I'm excited, made in the USA. You know, it's a good thing.
So when you say mold, that's like the mold or the form, and then is the company in there's got to be a whole factory with plastics and all these things making it, or how does that happen?
All of my stuff, except for the wooden handles, is made in LA. And they're all within 11 miles of each other. Gardenia area. It's all just this massive factory area, right? That's all they do is make stuff. And I go down there once every 3 weeks and check in with them. And but it's nice because they're all right. You know, my footprint's tight, and I'm really excited about that. They don't mail stuff to each other. They drive over and say hi, right? Yeah. So an injection mold it's basically a big piece of steel that they cut in half, and then they router out whatever piece you want, and then they drill a little hole, I think a couple of different holes, and put fittings on it, and then they close it. Boom! They shoot hot plastic into it. They wait a second, they pull it apart, and out pops your part. Yeah. And I mean, I can make 1,000 of these in one day. You know. And the rotational mold, what my drum's made out of, is two pieces that have already been. That process is insane. They, I don't know what product they use, but some guy makes this 3D printer kind of thing, and then pours like an aluminum frame around it, and then breaks that all out. Now they have my mixer, and then they engrave my names and stuff into it, and then they pour like powdered plastic in there, close it up, bolt it, and then put it inside an oven, and it rotates around until it melts it all. And then they go into another cooling room, and then it cools it down. They pull it apart, and then they take a little grinder and cut the top off, and there's my drum done.
Is that because it's a different type of plastic than what the axles are made out of, and it has to use that different process? They have to use, it's a different type of plastic, correct. And they have to, the reason why rotational mold works is you can't really make a mold and then shoot plastic into it, because it's odd shaped, right? Like a canoe. How would you have a form on the inside of a canoe and get it out? You couldn't, right? It's stuck once it's stuck. So that's why they do an exterior shell mold, and they get it hot, and the plastic goes all around, and then it cools it off, and they cut the opening on whatever it is. Water tanks, big water tanks are rotational molds. Then they drill the holes for the little valves or whatever. Wow. Yeah, that was a learning process. What was that like when you first got your first plastic one after your mold and had it in your hands? What was that moment like? Do you remember it pretty well? Almost as good as the day that I found out I got my patent. Yeah. The day I found out I got my patent, I cried for a while. I couldn't believe it. What a relief, man. Wow. What a relief. And then I told my wife and sat on my front porch and cried for another hour. She thought it was hilarious, but you probably just collapsed. You were just I did. I had no idea. Idea. That was a long process. But when I had a garage sale, I actually had one of my steel mixers in the side yard, the old wooden ones. And some guy came up to the garage sale and was like, "Oh, I'll take this and I'll take that." And he goes, "What's that?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's my concrete mixer." And he goes, "May I go look at it?" And I'm all, "Sure." He comes over and starts looking, and he goes, "Wow, you need to get this out of rotational mold." And I was like, "What's that?" And he goes, "Check it out. Go online and look rotational mold." And I was like, "Oh, okay." There you go.
Yeah, and he's totally right. I don't know who that guy is. Hey, if you're listening to this, I owe you a bunch of beers. Come on over. You know?
Amazing.
Right. Right. Huh. Yeah. And then
amazing.
Injection mold, I've known about for a while just because I have a buddy that has a part that he does. And I actually hit up an injection mold company and said, can you make one of these axles? You know, while I was down in LA, he goes, heck yeah, I can make one of those. And well, is it strong enough? And he goes, hit it with the hammer. You won't, this is really, really hard plastic. And I was like,
yeah,
how much to get a mold? And then how much per part? And he told me I'm all done.
Yeah. Sold.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just amazing. I know this isn't as interesting for our listeners maybe, but I feel like I wish I could have seen that moment where you got your patent, and just, I'm like getting emotional just thinking about this 13 years and 4 no's and all this money, and oh my gosh, I just can't imagine the relief that must have just been like pouring over you.
I was at my shop and I saw the email, and I swear to you that the email popped up, and I saw so many of those emails, and always it was no, always it was no from my attorney. It was no. And I looked at the email and it said something really like, oh man, wordy at first.
Yeah.
It wasn't congratulations the first word, right? Like, and I looked at it and I was just like,
here we go.
I crossed my head like, okay, so guess you're going to be in construction the rest of your life, which is fine. You're really good at what you do. You know, you have great clients. There's a lot of work. You pay the bills. Guess you're shutting the shop down, you know, and what are you going to do? Make more steel mixers, and you can't sell them. I mean, if you sell them, someone can knock it off.
Yeah.
And then I went into my shop. I didn't look at the email. I went into my shop and, you know, did set the alarm and closed it, and then opened up the email. I'm like, all right, let's see why they said no. And I read through, and then it said, congratulations, after you scroll down a little bit. And I remember staring at that for a minute. I was like, wait a minute, first time ever, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to go to tell my wife so bad, but I couldn't stop crying. And I don't know if you've ever tried to drive and cry. It doesn't work.
Yeah, you know? One time in my life, I had an experience, and I had to pull over because it just wasn't working. So I know what you mean. Yeah, you got to pull over.
You don't want to crash your truck, right?
Yeah.
I pulled over, I think 3 or 4 times driving home. I was going to go first get a bottle of nice champagne, right? And had to pull over a few times, but it's still honestly sitting in, you know, it's still, I mean, there's a reason why I have a patent number on my arm tattooed. I tattooed it on there just because I feel like it's a really big accomplishment, and I can feel it. And it was like, it taught me something about persistence and believing in yourself and keep going. Even like I'm not afraid to hear no's anymore, man. Like really, like if I talk to investors and they're like, no, or if I'm trying to sell one to someone, I'm not really trying to sell them at all to anyone. If you don't get it, if you don't want something easier, you know, to mix concrete with, and you think it's a gimmick or whatever, get out of the way. Cause I'm going to find yeses, and I'm not trying to, you know, convince anyone. I'm just letting everyone know there is no easier way to mix concrete. There isn't. And it's pretty dang cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that really is cool. So in this day and age, with people being able to price shop and buy things dirt cheap on Amazon, I'm sure you have a lot of people being like, yeah, it looks amazing, but I don't want to spend the money when I could just use a wheelbarrow and a shovel. You don't have to explain your pitch to them, but just talk about it, because this is one of the challenges in this day and age. You know, you'd love to sell them for pennies, but it just doesn't work. So what's your mindset? I'm sure there'll be a point where you can bring the price down, but what's your sort of mindset on price at the moment?
I think it's $297 right now on my website, maybe right around there, within $5.
Okay.
Made in the USA, recycled plastic. You know, that's pretty cheap.
Yeah.
And I would love to get it down below that, but as a startup company, you know, there's some big costs involved. I've got rotational mold, you know, injection molds. I've got attorneys. I've got people that are working for me. You know, it's I have to make it, you know, first, and also I need to get a bunch of sales and also quantity. Like if I'm going to order 100,000 of these, which is my goal in the next 3 years, then the price will go down. But really, I'm investing my time right now, and I'm getting certified through the government. I'm a disabled veteran, and I'm a veteran-owned company. And my goal is to sell to the government, right? I want to sell them to the construction builders and FEMA. And I honestly, when I'm done with that, because that's a process, when I'm done with that, I know that the sales will be high enough through them that I can lower my price. But right now, though, it is what it is. And I have some people that are saying, that's crazy, I'll buy a wheelbarrow. Yeah, but okay.
Yeah.
I can mix a bag of concrete blindfolded with one hand faster than they can mix a bag of concrete in a wheelbarrow. You know, like, and I've done it.
It's like you said, it's not for everybody, and that's fine. You know, when I was younger, believe me, $5 was like a huge number for I had to like really think about every dollar that left. As you get older and people are at different points in their career, it's not as big of a deal. And then I think it gets to a point where, honestly, it's almost like incumbent on people just to help the steel mixer. Like, we got to buy these things just to get this out there. It's such a beautiful and elegant, and God, this just needs to be in the world, you know, more. So, you know, for some people, I know it's going to be the kind of thing where, like, I want to have one of those for, you know, you're going to have it for years. Mix up concrete with pleasure and put a smile on your face every time you use it. And in addition, it's manufactured in California, no less, which I know in a lot of ways is not an easy state to do business in, let alone manufacturing and everything else you've been going through. So just for that reason alone.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
I was going to ask what I don't know if your grandfather's still alive, but the other family who kind of knew about great grandpa's original one, they got to just have the biggest smiles on their face also.
Yeah, no. My grandfather, my dad passed away last year, and my cousins that know about it, they're tickled. You know, my sister, my uncle, he's pretty tickled about it too. He thought that's cool. But I know that my great grandfather, my grandfather, my dad are smiling down from heaven right now. You know, and I would have loved my dad to see that, but he died in a car accident 2 years ago. That was pretty brutal and kind of put the brakes on the steel mixer for a while. I wasn't prepared, you know, for a loss like that. But it's made me stronger and also made me want to go harder to show him to be proud up in heaven, you know?
God, that's really something, man. That's fresh. I'm sorry to hear that. And what a decade you've been through. I mean,
wow,
that's just amazing. On top of everything else here, I've met a lot. I don't know if it's just contractors in general, but I know guys who work with their hands and use tools are oriented to think about tools. And I love the fact that every tool, it started as somebody's idea. You know, every pliers, you know, everything started as an idea. And I met a lot of guys in the trades who have ideas like right now, and it's just so hard to take that idea to the next step. So I'm sure you've have people kind of asking you for advice and like, hey, you've done this. What would you recommend I do next? What do you say to like a classroom of guys who kind of have these ideas in their head? Is it something that, you know, you can do you have people asking you for mentorship or helping, or are there resources available that a person at the ground level of this can start with?
You know, that's a great question, because I had a lot of people contacting me saying, hey, we'll help you get your patent, we'll help you sell, we'll help you. And, you know, they're really in it for the money. And there's a lot of sharks out there. There's a company, and I didn't use them, Invent is what they're called. That's a pretty cool place if you want to license an idea, right? But if it's a really, really good idea, like worth getting a solid patent, utility patent, I mean, one thing I think that I learned the most is like, look, you didn't just win the lottery. You know what I mean? Honestly, I'm still not making a lot of money off it. I'm so fresh though. Like I've only launched this, you know, a couple months ago, but you know, and I'm telling my sons this too. Listen, we didn't win the lottery. I still have a lot of work to do. And if you believe in your product, it's worth it, but baby steps, right? Like I would hire a lawyer. Definitely one of the biggest things you can do is get a non-disclosure. So if you talk to someone about it, they can't do anything with it. That's the first thing you do. And those are free offline, right? And that way you can start talking to people about it. And you know, you can get a lawyer and start doing the patent process. And then, I mean, I don't know if I know enough yet because I'm still there about what to do next.
Yeah.
But ideally, I had thought about, you know, after this launched and is self-sufficient and running on itself, to open up something like that. But that would put me in an office, and I don't really belong there.
Yeah.
But I would definitely say a non-disclosure and talk to a lawyer, but also know that you got a lot of work to do. It's not, you know, it's not just unless you're going to sell the idea, which you can, right? You're still going to need to get a non-disclosure. And a lot of big companies, like tool companies, they won't sign non-disclosures. They won't do it. Yeah. There was some big, I reached out to a couple of tool companies, made in the USA tool companies. They said, no, we don't sign those. And I was like,
wow.
But don't you want to hear about my good idea? They're all, go get a patent and then we'll talk to you. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Have you talked to them since you got your patent, or are you kind of just going to do it in-house now?
It's all in-house now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not. You know, it's funny because I have a couple investors and I just cut the other ones off and I'm getting a personal loan now. I'm so far along now, man. It's like, I'm not giving all the percentage away. You know?
Well, and at this point, like this exact thing, you can connect with the people. You don't need quite as many middlemen involved, and you.
Right.
This is one of the advantages tradesmen and working type people have, is that digging in and just working is like that comes natural. I've known people who have this idea, you know, maybe whatever it is, but the friction always comes when it's just like the hard, heavy lifting, like whether it's cold calls and whatever the actual grunt work is, that's where they kind of stall out. But guys who are in the trades and used to just like work, you know, what's a, you know, a bunch of cold calls or knocking on doors or getting told no, that part's easy. So it's kind of an advantage, it seems like, with once you've had like several years of really thrashing, you know, you're not quite as scared of the work aspect of, even if it's a different type of work, you know, you beat in the streets a little bit.
I'm not surprised that, you know, a lot of guys that have inventions or great ideas. You know, I think that good contractors or good tradesmen, we deal with solving the problems every day. That's what we do. We solve problems every day. Nothing goes right ever. I mean, if it does, you got a lucky day, and those are rare, right?
Yeah.
I've told my boys that they, you know, when they were younger, what do you do? I solve problems all day. And it's really what it is. And I believe that, you know, what's that saying? Frustration is the invention of all, or no, frustration is the mother of all inventions. You know, like if this isn't working, what is it? Wait, I know how to fix that.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. Well, our viewers know my dad well, and he's, you know how many things a framer, for just as an example, invents over their career, little contraptions to move the material up or to solve this exact thing, and little levers and little machines. And it's actually kind of amazing. Even in my dad's shop right now, the contraptions and things that he's built and invented, I mean, they're all over the place. Now, that's still a long ways from patenting them, but it's a mindset of sort of, of problem solving and thinking outside the box and assembling parts and fastening them with all the, you know, tools at your disposal and fasteners, you know, of, and it comes natural, I think, to tradesmen to some extent.
I agree. The good ones for sure.
Were you ever tempted to go on to? I haven't watched Shark Tank a lot, but every time I watch it, I like it, and I'm kind of like, oh, it's really cool. And I know it's mostly entertainment, but did that ever cross your head to try to get up there?
My old phone has Mark Cuban's phone number in it. I have a client that knows him personally, and they said, hey, you should call him up. And I said, you know, the last thing that I ever want to do is talk to sharks.
Yeah.
And I watched the show, and I was like, yeah, this is really cool. But what they really do, I mean, there's only that one lady that has like 100 patents. I would love to get in her pocket, but the other ones, I feel like they just throw money at your way, and then you're still going to do all the work yourself, right? So if you really believe what you got, go get a loan, do it, right?
Yeah.
Unless they have some great connections. The newer ones, they start using more of their connections. But I'm curious, percentage wise, who's really made it on Shark Tank? You know, I'm
the
curious.
TV network, I'm guessing, is the one who came out on top.
I think you're absolutely right. Right?
Yeah, that's the real winner. But I think it's a good show just because it gets people thinking this way in general. And that's only a good thing. I mean, compared to thinking about, I don't know, nothing wrong with baking or singing. Those things are also great, but thinking about creating is it's more valuable for humanity, you know, at least the way I look at the world. So I like that show. And, you know, that reminds me of just a thought I've had several times about partnerships in general, which is what that would be. And if you've had investors, you've come up with partnerships, but you want a partnership when the partner is bringing something to the table that you really need. And it's not always just money that you really need. You know, and if they're not bringing something you really need, well, what's the point? And so even if someone, Mark Cuban, has, you know, can inject all this money, I mean, that could be what you need, but not always. That's not always like the missing link. You know, that's not gonna instantly make everybody like want a mixer necessarily. So I don't know. Is there anything else in particular you want to definitely cover or talk about that we haven't?
Yeah, I wanted to let your listeners know that if they're thinking about buying a steel mixer, if they direct message me and use, I don't know, we can come up with a code right now, or just say, hey, I saw this on there. I'm going to give them 10% off just for.
Oh yeah, there you go. Do /EC and give them a bargain.
/EC, there it is.
Yeah. And what I was going to tell the listeners, and this is probably the first time they're hearing about the steel mixer, and I know you've sent one up to us that we'll use, but I think we're going to buy another one just because, like I said, it feels like almost like I have this duty to support, and I want to. And we're going to have this open house this summer on this spec house we're building, and it'll be a great thing to give away and kind of put out. So
that's awesome.
We'll get ours all dirty and bust it up, and then we'll purchase a new one to give away and get out in someone else's hands. I said it in the intro, but let me say it again in case people missed it and now they've heard more. Your Instagram account has a lot of really neat photos of this process all along the way. You can see the molds, you can see the prototypes, you can see the antique one, and it was really fun just scrolling through that and almost like seeing the story unfold as it goes. So everybody listening, we will link to that. And is it Steel Mixer? Is that the Amazon account? Okay. Anywhere else?
Not Amazon. Steelmixer.com is where you can buy them at.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I meant Instagram, on your Instagram account.
Steel Mixer, yes.
Yeah. Well, Stephen, thanks so much for taking the time. We will be in touch. We're cheering you on, and we will link to all of this in our description of the video and in the show notes. And I hope you have a great afternoon, and we'll catch up again one of these days. Keep it up.
Appreciate you having me. Thank you.